She stood in the doorway and watched the flames consume my wedding dress, lace collapsing into ash, silk curling into blackened threads, wild smiling. No apology, no explanation. Just the slow satisfaction of someone reclaiming a power she was never meant to have. That was the fracture. The moment I understood this family had never welcomed me, they had simply tolerated me until they could erase me. But I do not unravel. I document, I wait, and I rebuild. This is not about revenge. It is about restoring structure where rot once hid. The woman they underestimated did not break. She archived everything. It begins with ceremony dressed as civility, a meeting room, a printed folder, a severance offer prepared in advance. They tell her it is not personal. That is the lie. She listens, offers no resistance, signs the resignation with one motion, and walks out without a word. She does not rage. She does not explain. Her silence is not consent. It is the first act of control. On paper, she has been erased, but within the company's architecture systems, protocols, and historical logic she remains. She did not merely work here. She embedded herself. She understands the timing of every transaction, the logic of each system node, the pattern behind what appears random, and so when her access is quietly revoked, she does not panic. She observes. She notices changes in audit trails, authorization logs that should remain static now modified, vendor payment spikes that deviate from historical norms. The theft is not amateur. It hides in legitimacy signed approvals, familiar names, standard forms until the pattern becomes too perfect to be anything but fraud. A new consultant is brought in, armed with language that sounds authoritative but serves one purpose: erasure. He replaces institutional memory with clean artificial narratives. He is there to overwrite her, but he cannot rewrite what she documented. Midway through the spiral, the truth surfaces. The fraud is systemic. Shell corporations route money through trusted channels. Family members appear on payrolls. Compliance teams sign off with plausible deniability. It is not one person. It is the system itself protecting its rot. That is when she shifts. Until now, she has watched. Now she acts quietly, strategically, with the same precision she once used to build the company's internal logic. She now begins to dismantle it only where it has festered. The legal department grows nervous. Her name appears in internal threat assessments. They send warnings. They escalate tone. But in doing so, they validate her leverage. She is no longer a discarded employee. She is the one holding the receipts. She times everything. A boardroom confrontation is not improvised, is engineered. Timestamps match backups, backups match behavior, names, dates, approvals each. Disclosure is layered, sequenced, undeniable. Media packets are released, not to destroy, but to force accountability. In the aftermath, she is invited back, not because they miss her, but because they need her to restore integrity. She agrees, but only on her terms. Not revenge, reconstruction, not emotion. Structure. In the final image, we do not see triumph. We see continuities, something broken rebuilt. This time correctly. A system repaired by the very woman they tried to erase. At the center of the narrative is a woman whose strength is not in what she says, but in what she refuses to reveal. She is the system's silent architect, embedded, not in title, but in logic, memory, and sequence. Her defining trait is not brilliance, but precision. She never needed to be the smartest person in the room, only the most exact. In the beginning, she is loyal, methodical, uncelebrated. She does not draw attention because she is the foundation, predictable, essential, but overlooked. When she is discarded, she does not panic. She disconnects. Internally, she begins the shift from participant to observer, watching with clinical detachment as the institution begins to cannibalize itself in her absence. This distance is not detachment, TET, is diagnostic. She identifies the threat network, not emotionally, but operationally. Her silence becomes a scalpel. Her repression becomes an asset. And when the time comes, she moves with strategic certainty, to retaliate, but to repair. Her trajectory is not toward revenge, but toward restoration of integrity in a system that lost its internal compass. Around her orbit a series of functional forces, none of whom understand her until it is too late. The boss, the one who fires her, is not malicious, merely hollow. An MBA careerist whose allegiance is to optics, not substance. He delivers her dismissal with procedural detachment, believing the performance of civility is sufficient. He never suspects that silence can be a signal. His failure is not cruelty, but arrogance mistaking stillness for surrender. The operational villain, often a CFO or high-ranking executive, is far more deliberate. He is the architect of rot. He exploits trust through legitimate structures, contracts, vendor chains, regulatory loopholes. He does not embezzle in haste. He launders credibility. Through time and relationships, his immunity is built on repetition and visibility. He believes that if corruption becomes routine, it becomes invisible. The consultant arrives as the next layer, a placeholder dressed as authority. Their job is not to solve, but to overwrite. With every buzzword and performance metric, they attempt to erase her institutional memory. They are a threat only insofar as they serve as the vessel for forgetting. They do not see the trap they step into, because they think memory is paperwork. It is not. It is her. And within the quiet edges of the story, one figure exists outside the system entirely. A partner, a friend, someone who does not function. Within the procedural world, this character does not solve anything. That is the point. They offer no strategy, no access, no solution. They exist to remind her that beyond circuitry and silence, there is still something worth being whole for. Their role is not mechanical. It is human. In moments of compressed pressure, they offer contrast, not softness, but recognition. They remind her that endurance is not just tactical, it is personal, and that everything she builds, even now, must still lead somewhere worth returning to. These characters do not orbit her. They define the fault lines she chooses to cross or not. What drives her is not rage, it is order. Her voice is not loud, because her strength does not require volume. She was never absent. She was simply underestimated at its core. This narrative is an indictment of institutional betrayal, not the dramatic kind, but the kind that arrives dressed in protocol, where loyalty is acknowledged until it becomes inconvenient. The protagonist has given years of precision, discretion, and integrity to a structure that ultimately rewards her with erasure. This is not a story of explosive downfall, but of quiet exploitation where systems consume those who hold them together the moment. Those individuals become liabilities. The betrayal is not loud, it is procedural. And within that silence, deeper truths emerge. The illusion of power titles, corner offices, polished rhetoric is exposed as hollow when contrasted with the protagonist's real influence. Her memory, her understanding of how systems breathe, interlock, and protect themselves. She was never the face of the institution, yet she carried its function. Her invisibility, initially treated as irrelevance, becomes her advantage. She has no public presence to dismantle, no authority figure to discredit. That absence becomes her shield, then her sword. She does not need to be seen in order to act. She has already woven herself into the company's operating logic. What she dismantles later is not a single fraud. It is a culture that normalized blindness. The rot is not in one bad actor. It is in the comfort with which others accept what should not be ignored. This is the true corruption. Not the act of stealing, but the collective decision to stop noticing. Her response is not driven by vengeance or emotion, it is rooted in discipline. She does not scream, she prepares. She does not seek validation, she seeks accuracy. Her restraint is not emotional absence. It is power under control. The ideological spine of the story is built on this restraint. That silence can be more destabilizing than fury. It is integrity, structure, and the right to define her value on her terms, not through title, but through impact. In a world that often rewards visibility and punishes depth, she asserts that real power is quiet, structural, and enduring. The system tried to erase her. The style of this narrative is stripped to its essential elements. Every sentence measured, every word deliberate. There is no space for redundancy, no tolerance for exposition disguised as insight. The language reflects the protagonist herself. Efficient, exact, and unflinching. What happens unfolds not through dialogue or overt reaction, but through her internal recalibration, the quiet adjustments she makes as the world shifts beneath her. Her mind becomes the lens through which we perceive every betrayal, every threat, every move. The tone is cold, but never lifeless, precise rather than detached. It is forensic, but human. Emotional weight is earned not by expression, but by restraint. There are no breakdowns. There are moments of stillness where the silence carries more threat than any outburst could. The rhythm of the prose is architectural, patterned, and reinforced by deliberate repetition. Phrases recur not to dramatize, but to stabilize meaning. They do not know. I nodded once. Just watch. These are not slogans. They are anchors, echoes of a mind that understands structure better than spectacle. Each line moves the story forward. There is no language for performance, only function. Even the rare metaphor must serve a structural or psychological truth. Imagery is not indulgent. It is symbolic, referencing systems, architecture, survival, containment. The result is a narrative that feels tightly wound, like a sealed chamber. Under rising pressure, emotion seeps through cracks, not through confession. And when release comes, it is not in the form of catharsis, but precision, the exact disclosure at the exact time, in the exact way that leaves no room for denial. The style, like the protagonist, refuses to beg for understanding. It presents itself as fact, and demands the reader keep up. There's no chaos here, only control. The symbols threaded through this narrative are not decorative, they are structural. They emerge from the protagonist's worldview, not as artistic flourishes, but as extensions of how she processes threat, memory, and endurance. Systems and architecture form the dominant motif. Bridges, frameworks, internal schematics. These are not background images, they are reflections of the protagonist herself. She understands design not only as a professional skill, but as a psychological stance. She builds structures that are resilient, recursive, and exact. So when those around her corrupt the foundation, she does not destroy it. In anger, she dismantles it, piece by piece, rewiring the architecture with the same discipline she once used to create it. Alongside steel and circuitry, another motif appears: the cactus. A plant that requires little, survives in silence, and offers no spectacle. It is not soft, but it endures. It does not bloom for attention. It lives for continuity. That is her. She does not need validation, applause, or rescue. Her strength lies in what she withholds, in what she can survive without. And underneath all of this quiet, constant, never remarked upon directly is the motif of backups drives archived data. Nothing in her world is improvised. Every key document has a mirror, every communication stored, every irregularity logged and sealed. These devices are not props. They are her memory, externalized. In a world that tried to erase her presence, she left traces everywhere. Her safety was never in confrontation, it was in documentation. The cactus survives without water. The system stands because she understood its deepest logic. The data remains because she saved it long before anyone thought to delete it. These are not metaphors of hope. They are metaphors of quiet, strategic survival in a world that prizes flash over function. She is none of what they celebrated, and she is the only one who remained. This narrative operates like a sealed system, no leak, unaccounted for, no moment wasted. Every thread must be planted early, not as foreshadowing for spectacle, but as functional components of an engineered outcome. Access is introduced casually, perhaps a routine login, a forgotten admin credential, a non-disclosure clause she herself wrote. Knowledge appears in fragments, an offhand remark, a misplaced file, a calendar notification archived months ago. Legal nuance surfaces early as background language in a policy she authored. The tone of a contract she once enforced. None of this is highlighted. It is buried in plain sight, waiting for reactivation. Her strength is not improvisation, it is recall. When the system turns on her, she is not surprised. She is already prepared. There are no coincidence wins. She succeeds not because the narrative bends in her favor, but because she saw further earlier. Her success is earned through long latency, quiet, strategic anticipation disguised as passivity. What others perceive as reaction is actually activation. She does not stumble upon truths. She reveals what she already suspected. Even exposition becomes tactical. Information is never delivered to the audience for their benefit, it is weaponized. A spreadsheet is not shown to explain, it is shown to expose. A line of dialogue is not for clarity. It is a pressure point. When something is revealed, it destabilizes a structure already cracking. This is not a plot driven by discovery. It is driven by confirmation. She has known all along. She just needed the right timing. Every flash drive, every email trail, every archived backup is not convenience. It is preparation. Her awareness is not presented with flair, it is proven. Through outcome, she understands systems. She knows that truth without timing is useless. She waits, then she moves. The engineering here is not just of plot, but of inevitability. When the final confrontation arrives, there is no debate, no reversal, no plea. The pieces have already fallen into place. All that remains is recognition. What she does is not magic. It is design. This is not a fantasy of vengeance or cinematic genius. The emotional trajectory is built on compression, not outburst on. The kind of slow interior adjustment that happens when someone who has always functioned within systems finds herself betrayed by the very one she sustained. She does not react with disbelief or rage because, deep down, she always understood how easily institutions discard those they no longer need. Her control is not a performance. It is the result of years spent surviving in environments that reward invisibility and punish intuition. Her adaptation is not reactive, it is precise. Long conditioned, the emotional realism lies in her restraint. She absorbs the blow, isolates the pattern, and recalibrates her position without drama. There is pain, but it is metabolized. There is betrayal, but it is mapped, not mourned. And the corruption she uncovers is not melodramatic or invented. It is procedural. Vendor laundering appears in overlapping invoices and procurement shell games. Inflated compliance metrics are signed off by risk committees more concerned with optics than oversight. Consultancy whitewashing is used to wipe clean historical memory under the guise of modernization. These are not narrative inventions, they are common tactics dressed in executive language. What she uncovers could plausibly unfold inside any mid to large-scale corporate structure where institutional trust is a currency easily manipulated. The technical infrastructure must also carry weight. Her role, whether IT administrator, legal compliance officer, or operations analyst, feel lived in. Every access level, every software audit trail, every offsite backup must be positioned with quiet authenticity. She does not guess passwords or hack servers. She retrieves what she designed, logged or stored because she knew better than to trust anyone else with the integrity of the system. The hierarchy of access, the discipline of version control, the layered architecture of internal systems all must reflect the realism of enterprise infrastructure. She understands data retention policies, regulatory thresholds, metadata trails. These details are not trivia, they are lifelines, and so the narrative avoids sensationalism entirely. It replaces fantasy with plausibility. It replaces revenge tropes with professional discipline. What remains is a woman who was prepared not because she hoped this would happen, but because she understood it, could and built accordingly. Her victory is not poetic, it is structural. This narrative is not built on escalation, it's built on calibration. Every moment carries weight. Every word performs a function. There is no excess, no waste. The structure operates like a sealed system under pressure, tightly coiled, meticulously aligned, and quietly devastating. The emotional depth is not in what is said, but in what is withheld. Silence here is not absence. It is deliberate architecture. The protagonist's restraint is not passive. It is the outcome of design. She does not dominate through power, but through accuracy. She understands that control does not require visibility, only comprehension. The story's betrayal is not theatrical, it is bureaucratic, procedural, and normalized. That is what makes it so brutal. It reflects the slow violence of systems that reward compliance and erase loyalty the moment it becomes inconvenient. And yet, the revenge arc never takes the expected shape. This is not about vengeance, it is about structural reclamation. The protagonist does not destroy what failed her. She rebuilds it on her terms, by her rules, and without seeking recognition. The film this becomes is not driven by dialogue-heavy confrontations or emotional catharsis. It is quiet, measured, inescapable. Its tension is derived not from what might happen, but from the certainty that everything that will happen has already been set in motion. It invites the viewer to pay attention, to notice the precision behind each silence, each pause, each withheld expression. In tone and thematic precision, it aligns with the cold, internal unraveling of the lives of others and the quiet legal architecture of Michael Clayton. Except here, the battlefield is not art or law, but circuitry, access, and memory. The protagonist is not a hero in the traditional sense. She is a constant. The one variable the system miscalculated. She never truly left. They simply stopped seeing her. And in doing so, they gave her everything she needed to bring the structure to its knees, not with a scream, but with a sequence.